Folks, it's Isolation Nation, the only show about mental health that actually has a mental health diagnosis. We are the split personality show. On one hand, we know how to have a good time. Rejected! On the other hand, we can be deadly serious.
And so what I would like to see, because I did introduce a motion in the Senate for a Senate committee to study issues of mental health and suicide prevention.
And then we flip back to the other direction.
It's a nation in isolation.
On today's show, two individuals who take it very seriously. Fire Chief Matthew Pegg from the Toronto Fire Services, also in charge of emergency response in Toronto, and Senator Patrick Brazeau, who has taken on the toughest opponent of his career.
I see this as a new calling for myself.
Still singing that song in my head. It's a nation in isolation. Hey, Case, don't roll your eyes at me. I get no respect around my house for my singing ability, which is terrible. God, it's terrible. But you know what? That's the beauty of having a mental health challenge. You get really good at talking about the things that you can do, that you can't do without shame or embarrassment. I'll start out by saying that. I suffer from depression. It's been severe at times. On my medication will be the rest of my life, but I'm not ashamed. I'm not embarrassed, and I'm sure not weak. Before we meet the guests, let's see a guy who's kind of becoming a co-host for this. It's Sean CULLEN. He is an actor, a singer, a songwriter, of course, a comedian. And what do you got for us today, Sean?
Hi there. It's Sean CULLEN, and you're tuning in to Isolation Nation. And I know you're sitting in your home in isolation thinking, how can I get as fit as Sean CULLEN? That guy is ripped. What an Adonis. What a chiseled god. Yes, it's true. I am incredibly fit. But I can give you a couple of great tips on how to get to the level that I'm at physically. Just stay tuned. And now it's time for our host. Yes, you know him. You love him. The sensual, the intriguing, and the just goddamn attractive Michael Landsberg.
Okay, Sean. We'll get back to Sean later on. But right now we introduce my buddy. He's been on the show once before. I speak to him on the radio all the time. He is one of the three faces that you see all the time in the city of Toronto. He is, of course, the fire chief of Toronto Fire Services, and he is also the general manager of emergency management for Toronto. He's got a huge job, a lot of weight on his shoulders. Matthew Pegg. Chief, how are you?
I'm excellent, sir. How you doing?
You know, I'm doing well. As I was introducing you, and it occurred to me, and that's why I said it, you have a lot of weight on your shoulders. Is that getting to you? And if the answer is no, I would like to know how, because, this is such a pressure-packed time where the stakes are so big. Now, I know daily on your job as fire chief, obviously the stakes are huge, but this is kind of thrown onto the pile.
Yeah, it's tough. There's a lot of, you called it right. There's a lot of pressure. It is unrelenting in the sense that this seems to be, it's day after day and night after night, and it keeps going. And then, of course, what makes it really hard, which hence the point, I think, is we're all isolated, and I am too. I spend the vast majority of my day by myself connected electronically. Really, the only significant face-to-face I have is the afternoon press conferences every day. The rest is remote.
Right. And so my question for you would be then, do you practice self-care in any way, or are you kind of last on the list, like everybody in Toronto who you are now and have always been, but now in a different way, responsible for making sure we're as safe as we can be? Do you leave yourself off the list?
I have a bad habit of often forgetting to look after me, but I actually had a pretty cool thing happen just a few days ago. My psychologist, and you and I have talked about the fact that I see a psychologist. His name's Dr. David, and he's phenomenal. He actually reached out to me on email and just connected and said, obviously we're physically distanced, we're not doing anything, but just wanted to check in, see how you're doing, and let you know that I'm here if we need to if you're interested and you want to have a chat, we'll do that electronically. So I appreciate him doing that. And he reminded me that I need to book that appointment and connect and check in.
Yeah, you do for sure. And when you say Dr. David would be his first name. You just call him that because you're not mentioning his name.
Yeah, his name's David Moskovich, Dr. David Moskovich.
I thought I was going to say, there's no patient-doctor confidentiality. You can talk about your own doctor. I used to go to spin class with my psychiatrist, and we didn't go together, but she was there, and Casey and I would go, and I would introduce her as my psychiatrist, and she'd be going, "No, don't do that." I go, "Look, that's my option. I can do this if I want. You can't introduce me as your patient, but I can introduce you as my psychiatrist." I kind of feel like, and I know this is one of the reasons why you talk about Dr. David, is that it's empowering to others to hear the fire chief and a person in your position, especially right now, talk about his psychologist. I think that might be the most valuable thing that you can possibly say.
Absolutely. And it, like we've talked about before, Michael, there is, probably now more than ever, it strikes me that there is absolutely nothing. In fact, I think it's the antithesis of weak. Not only is there nothing weak about it, but it's important. We talk, Tony Bavoda, who's one of the deputy chiefs at Toronto Fire I work with, has this saying. He talks about the check up from the neck up. And that's exactly what happens. I do my best to see Dr. Moskovich every 3 months, but this is a tough go. We're in a tough, it's a grind. And, whether, you call it self-care, whatever kind of vernacular we put around it, there is no shame whatsoever in acknowledging that this is really hard. We are not wired to be in the circumstance we're in. We're not wired to be at home and restricted to being removed from other people. And that's really, really hard. And like we talked about last time, I think the most important thing for me is making peace with the fact that that's not okay. I don't enjoy that at all. None of us do, and it's hard. And number two, doing our very best to let go of the stuff that we don't control and try and focus on the things that we do. There's a ton about COVID-19 and about self-isolation and physical distancing that we don't control, and getting fixated on those things that really bother us, I think, can be unhealthy. So what I try and do is stay focused on the difference I can make, and where, the things that I can control, like what I eat, and, trying to get reasonable amounts of sleep and staying hydrated and those kind of things.
Yeah, I think that advice is pretty well universal. Try to stay busy, create a plan for yourself, self-care, all of that. But I'll tell you, I'll be, why wouldn't I be honest? Those are just words that come out of people's mouths. I'll be honest with you. My point is, I'm really worried about the aftermath. It's like the tornado is going through right now, and we're all locked in our homes. And in a lot of ways, we can't see the damage. And then one day we're going to walk out of our homes, and we're going to see the damage. And we're going to see the damage with people, especially those who are first responders, who are in the line of fire. I read in the New York Post yesterday, a terrible story about an ER doctor. I don't know if you heard it, but she was a frontline ER doctor, and she took her own life. This was on the weekend, and just reading that, it was so heartbreaking, but so predictable, right? I mean, she's in New York, where the number of patients and the number of people that die on your watch and the lack of control, no one was meant for that. So I worry about all kinds of after effects from what is right now the tornado.
I do too. Our city does, our whole team does. And, I think what I've made peace with, Michael, and, there's a lot I don't know. None of us really know what that's going to look like, but I'm certain that when this is all over, and when we quote unquote go back to normal, I think we're going to have a very new normal. I think that, the way that we approach things, the way we think about things, the way we interact with other people, and, likely the way our city and our province and our country and our world looks is going to be different. But we'll be okay.
I mean, those are just words, though. We'll be okay. I mean, sure, as a society, I'm sure we will be, but there will be people that we lose because of the illness, because of the virus, and because of what the virus brings to our world. And that story in particular is just really haunting me. Here's a question for you, Chief. I don't know if you if it's up your alley, but you can certainly give us practical tips. Any ideas for alleviating anxiety attacks? Mine are getting much worse with the isolation as well, looking after my parents, which is kind of people of our generation. That's pretty typical. Life is complicated enormously because of a generation that's older than us, much more vulnerable to this illness, and they're in isolation. So, any tips?
Well, I don't have a lot of experience, Michael. I mean, first off, for what it's worth, I would say be thankful and be grateful for the fact that you have parents to reach out to. Both my mom and dad are gone, and I'm envious of the fact that many people have the ability to still reach out, and that's fantastic. But I think what I listen to Dr. Davila talk about all the time and suggest is we are in an era and an age right now where we have to connect. We got to do everything we can do to connect like we are right now. Leverage technology, and I know sometimes our parents aren't really into that whole thing, but connect. Do our best to stay connected. Get on the phone. Canada Post still delivers letters, right? So there's nothing wrong with sitting down with a pen and a piece of paper and writing a letter. And, I think for me, it's about trying to do what we can do and trying to do the best I can do to stay focused on the things that I can influence and just really trying to let go of the things that I can't.
Yeah, it's sound advice for sure. And you're right about the parent thing. I mean, you lost your mom last fall, and obviously, you wish that you were in a position where you could be responsible for her health and where you could be worried about her and that you could take care of her at this really difficult time. But as for technology, no. Not going to happen, Chief. My dad, who's a highly intelligent man, he was an orthodontist, right? Went to dental school, which means he couldn't get into medical school, but that's okay. Dental school is still not that easy. And he's lost. Call waiting is going to explode his brain for sure. There's another call coming through. Hold on one sec. Hello? Yeah, Dad, it's still me. Oh, sorry, one sec. Damn thing. Hello? It's still me, Dad. What are you doing? Well, I actually haven't done anything. So, unfortunately, technology is
okay. Fair enough. I'll just shut up.
I want to introduce you to somebody. His name is Patrick Brazeau. He is a senator, and I mean, his story has had ups and downs, which makes him much more relevant to those of us who've had mental health challenges. Because if you've been up all the time, and not many people have been, but if you've never experienced the downs and the lows and had to pull yourself out, then the advice that you can offer others is kind of limited. So Senator Patrick Brazeau, roll it, Phil. Take a look. For years, Senator Patrick Brazeau has been on the defense in the boxing ring against Justin Trudeau.
Brazeau's getting more punches in than I thought he would. Look at that.
He's got him up against the ropes.
Taking it in the face.
In the wrestling ring against some dude named Hannibal the Death Dealer. Try saying that with a straight face. But by far the greatest pile driver of all for Senator Patrick Brazeau has been his struggles with the law.
My downfall started with, assault charges, and then later on, suspension from the Senate.
But in an amazing and so impressive a switch, Patrick Brazeau has flipped from being on defense to offense, facing one of the toughest issues of our time.
I would like to see, because I did introduce a motion in the Senate for a Senate committee to study issues of mental health and suicide prevention, is to have the resources, the financial resources available and the resources on the ground, and for people to have easy access to help if they need it. I see this as a new calling for myself.
A new calling can be really powerful. Patrick Brazeau, Senator, what a pleasure to finally sort of meet you. I mean, this may be as close as we get, certainly at this time. I'd love to come and give you a hug, but that's not going to happen. Pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Say hi to the chief.
Chief Pegg, hi, first and foremost, and I would like to thank you for what you do, because personally, it's because of first responders like yourself that I'm able to join you guys today. So thank you for what you do.
Nice. Very nice to meet you, Senator. Thank you for that.
What do you mean by that when you said you can join us today because of first responders who do what he does?
Well, several years ago, to make a long story short, I tried to end my life. I tried to commit suicide, and I was left in a pool of blood. And it is because of a neighbor who called first responders, who got to the scene, and then they did the extraordinary work that they needed to do to keep me alive. So that's why I'm essentially here today.
Wow. How long ago was that?
That was in January of 2016.
So we're talking about 4 years ago, essentially. You were in the kind of place where you wanted to, I don't know if wanted to is the right word. Would you say wanted to end your life, or you saw it as the lesser of evils, which the evilest thing would have been continuing to live? How would you express it?
Well, look, I'm a father of 6 children, aging between the ages of 26 and 1.5-year-old at home. And so essentially, I thought that that everybody would be better off without me. And, it was a spur of the moment decision. And the rest is history. But obviously, I'm doing much better now, and I'm in a much better place.
Chief, what Patrick just described, I'm sure you have heard from firefighters that you have tried to impact their life, and the idea that people will say, and this is it's crazy, because what parent would ever think their kids would be better off without them? But I'm sure you've heard that, and to me, that's the power of mental illness, able to convince us of something that's ludicrous.
Yeah, it breaks my heart, Michael, and I'm so happy that we're sitting having a conversation with the senator today, because obviously that could have been a whole lot of a much different circumstance. But I do hear those stories, and our men and women on the front line see those things, unfortunately, on a daily or near daily basis. But it describes a low and describes a pain that I will say, fortunately, I've never experienced, and I've really come to realize how fortunate I am because of that.
Patrick, hold on one sec. Here's a question for the chief before you go on your way and do what it is you're doing that's so important. This is for you. I'm in ops, but off for PTSD. I'm feeling guilty for not being able to shoulder my part of the COVID-19 calls. Thoughts?
Yeah, one, it's exactly what we talk about. It's sick, not weak. And the reality is post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic stress disorder are very real issues. And there's not, I mean, from the bottom of my heart, there's nothing to feel guilty about in the fact that as a result of critical incidents or cumulative mental stress, it's made you sick. This is why we're a team, right? I would say we'll take it from here. We have brothers and sisters. We've got people that we work with that'll pick up the load when you and I can't. And right now, the most important thing, focus on your health, focus on getting better, and we'll welcome you back with open arms.
Yeah, Chief, that's terrific. I don't hide the fact that you're one of my best buddies now, and nothing but admiration for what you've done for the city. And personally, I think you're doing it to keep me alive. I know that's kind of the motivation behind it, and I love you for that. So thanks for your time today. I know that you're real busy, and we'll catch up with you next week again on the show.
You will so. Thanks. Great to see you, Senator, and thanks, Michael, very much.
You be well.
That's the chief, Matthew Pegg. So, Patrick, I mean, the story with with Chief Matthew Pegg is that I went and gave a speech, as I'm apt to do, to the college. So there were young firefighters were there, and I was talking about mental health, and he and I got connected afterwards, and he ended up saying, hey, you know, help me help my people, because I want to be the fire chief who opens the door to possibilities. And the most powerful thing he did, which is something you have done as well, Patrick, is he spoke about his own issues, his own battle, the fact that he has, you know, seen some things in his life that have been really painful for him, and that he has seen a professional about it. And I think that's the greatest thing that you bring to the table, is this awful time that you've had in your life and the pain that you've gone through.
Well, unfortunately, in these times with this pandemic, you know, we're asked to be patient, and obviously that's key, and people need to listen to that advice. But however, I think that anybody across the country who may be struggling with mental health issues, or if they feel that they need help, then they should not be patient to seek that help. In fact, they should get it as soon as possible, because in my case, you know, I was raised to be tough and to be strong, and you know, and not to cry, and etc. But having said that, that was part of you know, the struggles that I had and the downfall that I had, because I was really ashamed to seek help, and it took many years for myself to realize that if I'm struggling, if I'm hurting, if things aren't getting any better, it means that I need help. And so it's as soon as, and it's so difficult. I mean, I struggled for years in not seeking help because of this shame. But once I did, it totally opened up my life and my eyes to a little bit of how I was before as a human being. But you know, I think I'm a better person today, even though it's an ongoing struggle. But I'm certainly a better person today.
So when's the first time that you reached out for help? When was that?
Well, actually, it was the very first time is when I woke up from a 3-day coma after I tried to commit suicide. And I've said this publicly before, but the doctor who basically did the surgery on me sat on my bedside and started talking to me. You know, he said he knew about my career, had so much potential. Why was I doing this to myself? And that I perhaps should seek help. And you know, I had family members who knew that I was struggling, but at the same time, I was hiding it. When they were asking me how things were going, I would smile and say everything is fine. But inside, it was really a fire burning, and you know, I was. It was rough. And so when I saw the doctor, because we all go for doctor's appointments, some are short appointments, others are not. They're busy people, and that's fine. But when I saw that he took all that time to sort of prep me up, or you know, to boost my morale a little bit, I immediately, before I came out of the hospital, I consulted with a psychiatrist.
So how many years would you say you suffered before? This would have been the first part of 2016, right? So how many years would you say you should have been seeing a doctor?
Well, it was during the turmoil, the personal turmoil and professional turmoil that started in, I guess, 2012. You know, I don't think I had any mental health issues before that, but you know, suspension from the Senate, I hit rock bottom. I had trouble finding employment. My self-esteem was gone. You know how it goes. And it was very tough, because here I was, still a fairly young man, not being able to financially provide for my children. And so that's why at that time I thought that they would be better off without me. But it was really in that my own personal turmoil period, which you know, it may not seem like a long time, but when you're living it on a daily basis,
hey,
my hair is really white now.
Well, you know, you say it may not seem like a long time. It does. Imagine if someone said that they had a kidney stone that lasted 4 years. You would go, oh my God, like, how did you make it through it? I mean, that's to me, because I have been through that deep depth of pain, being in that dark hole. And it seems interminable. And to have gone through it for 4 years, man, you got to understand that you are a walking, living, breathing, wrestling, boxing example of what people have to understand. And that is the things that this illness can tell us in our heads, that Patrick Brazeau, your kids will be better off without you, is absurd. That's the power of the illness, because I can guarantee you someone who's going to watch this who is in the position that you were in, thinking the world would be better off without them. What do you have to say to that person?
Well, when I thought about that some time ago, I know now that it's the complete opposite. And like you say, it's the strength that mental health challenges pose to some people, because when we're struggling, sometimes we don't see clearly, we don't think clearly, and like I said earlier, we tend not to reach out, and we should be doing the exact opposite, because look at what's happening in this pandemic. I mean, there are always the bad, some bad people out there, but Canadians are helping each other regardless of where people are living. We're helping each other, and the same holds true with mental health challenges. People shouldn't be ashamed, shouldn't be afraid to ask for help, because there's always somebody out there to help others.
So you have introduced a bill in the Senate. I would like to be able to tell you how that works and how something makes its way through the Senate. I don't have a clue, and I made it this far in my life without knowing, so you don't have to bother telling me. But what is your goal? What would you like to bring to the whole mental health treatment, suicide? What's your dream?
Well, look, like I said, I had my my own experiences with the law, with professionally and personally, and I also did a few stints in rehab. And it is when I got to rehab that I saw that there was a lot of men, adult men in particular, who were also struggling. And if you took away the substances from many of these adult men, then they wouldn't find themselves in the problems that they did. And so I went to therapy, and I listened, and I gelled, and I gelled with people. I made a lot of friends there. And once I came out, I decided that I was going to try and help some of these people as much as possible. And so what I've done, just before Christmas, I introduced a motion in the Senate for a Senate committee to study issues of mental health and suicide prevention, because of my background and because of the many, perhaps millions of Canadians dealing with these issues. And the focus of this motion is to look at those two main issues, but also to take a particular look at young men and boys and men, including Indigenous peoples. Because we know that 75% of suicides out there are done, unfortunately, by men. Also unfortunate for women who take their lives, but the 75%, that's a high number. And so how can we now in 2020 look at this issue and bring some solutions? What is being done out there? Is there issues of a lack of funding? Look at the best case. The best test cases of organizations out there who are doing the great work that they're doing, but to put an emphasis on helping these people as much as possible.
Well, that is, that is, I'm trying to think of the right, I don't bring God into the picture much, but if you were apt to use the term, that's God's work, then I think it would apply to that. We, the mental health community, need advocates on Parliament Hill, who can take a system which I don't even think it's broken. I just don't think it ever existed for mental health, and to try to give people the chance that they all deserve. What a pleasure meeting you. You want to hang around and hear what Sean Cullen's got to say about exercise tips?
Absolutely.
Okay, so hold on one sec. Okay, Sean, you're up now, and the question is, what do you have for us today, and how about giving us those tips on exercise? Roll it, Phil.
Hi, Michael. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you're keeping fit like I am.
Well, I mean, no one's fit quite like you, but you are one of the fittest people around. So what do you have for us today, Sean?
Of course, you can see that I'm incredibly fit right now. And, a lot of people ask me, how do I do it? How do I keep so tight at such a difficult time? And I've got a couple of tips. Mostly I would keep fit by wrestling my mother, which she's not available right now. We do some virtual wrestling, but it's really not the same. You don't get the same sweat. But I have a couple of tips that can help you on your way.
I'd like to hear what they are. And I'm glad your mom's not around because I don't think I want to hear about wrestling.
Sure. Well, first off, people think I'm just poorly groomed, that I don't take any time to brush my hair. But the thing is, hair is an integral part of my fitness program. I just sit for about 15 minutes a day and force my hair to grow longer by just concentration and tension in my body. So here's a tip like this. This is how it goes. Now, you don't see results right away. It's an incremental thing, but it is incredibly taxing on the body and great for your blood pressure.
Yeah, let's move past that as quickly as we can. What else do you have,
Sure,
Sean?
The other thing I do is I get naked, which is always a pleasure for me. Just looking at myself naked is one of the great thrills of my life. But I cover my naked body with olive oil. Then I get in the tub and I try and struggle out of the tub without using my hands or arms. So it's incredible as a core workout. Really, you struggle a lot. The frustration, I often end up crying and sitting in a pool of tears and olive oil. But I try and imagine myself as a Greek gladiator, which is weird because there were no gladiators in ancient Greece. But that's just the way I am. I gladiate the way I want to. And so cover yourself in oil, struggle. You'll see an incredible increase in fitness.
Thanks, dude. Appreciate this as always. Great tips.
Michael, it's always a pleasure to be here. And if I can help in any way, please let me know. Take care. And remember, wash your hands and wipe your bums.
That is wrong for so many reasons. It's only right for one reason, I think, and that's because he is really funny. That's Sean Cullen, who has been gracious enough to entertain us on a daily basis. I met him years ago on Off the Record, and we kind of reconnected on this, and he just does stuff like that off the top of his head. He'll be back tomorrow. I'd like to tell you, I know what he's going to have in store for us, but I have no clue. Patrick Brazeau. Just for 1 second, tell me why did you referee that wrestling match, and why did you let him do a pile driver on the table? I mean, that I was going to say, did you have a death wish? But that may be inappropriate given the fact that you told us that you actually did have a death wish at one time.
Exactly. Well, with respect to the wrestling, I've always been a wrestling fan since I could remember, and at one point, Hannibal came to me and asked me if I wanted to take part. And, I'm always looking out to doing new things and fun things. And so I said, why not?
It had a Mick Foley feel to it, it was kind of the amateur wrestling toned down, smaller market version of Hell in the Cell. You were Mick Foley, and the Grim Reaper, or whatever his name was Undertaker.
Well, essentially, that's what it was. But when I got pile driven through that table, fortunately, I didn't lose any teeth like Mick Foley once did.
Yep, for sure. Thanks, man. Pleasure meeting you. Let's reconvene again soon. I know the chief is still there, so why don't I say thanks to the chief again? And Chief, thank you. Always appreciate your time, how you squeeze us in.
Yeah, my pleasure, Michael. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, I was going to say, because that's I kind of dismissed you by saying, you're really busy. You have a city to save, and you're still sitting there. So thanks for making me look bad. You won't get that kind of abuse anywhere else, and you can only do that when a guy is your buddy. So hang on one second. We'll talk after we're done. Try to leave people with a thought. And by the way, Phil, why don't we do this? We had prepared to roll you the now theme song from Sean and I. Why don't you roll that when I wrap this up, play it, and then the show will be over. I'm talking to Phil now. Okay. So I try to summarize things in a little shot that you can take with you. And I kind of look at it this way. If my brain made a noise, remember the little train that could? Do you remember that case, the little train that could? I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. Well, for me on a good day, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. But on a bad day, it's, I think I can. I don't think I can. I know I can't. Two versions of the same thing going in opposite directions. And on those days when you say, I know I can't, that's when you have to be able to refer to your successes, the good days. That's why I tell people all the time, mark it down, write it down, record it. When you're having a good day, tell yourself why you're special. Tell yourself what you do well. Keep it for those dark, rainy days, because I can tell you it is so empowering to be able to see it. We'll see you tomorrow on Isolation Nation. And now, like I said, here's the runaway song hit of the COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic. It's Sean Cullen, written and performed by him, with yours truly being somewhat of a backup singer.
Hi there, Michael. Are you ready to sing our song together? You have a verse, and here's what we'll do. I'll play, I'll do my verse, then I'll let you do your verse, and then we'll wrap it up. If you want to sing along at the end, that's good too. Let's hear it. It's a nation in isolation. It's a difficult situation. It's a nation in isolation. Now would be a good time to take a masturbation. Go!
It's a nation in isolation. It's a difficult situation. It's a nation in isolation. I can use Purell as my lubrication. Go!
Now we're spending time all alone. This would be a good time to download some porn on your phone. It's a nation in isolation. It's a difficult situation. It's a nation in isolation. Now would be a good time to take a masturbation. Yeah. Isolation Nation. Yeah, I think that went well.